The mink's actually an interesting story because when I arrived here at Laurentian, I was someone who worked on mammals. I worked on terrestrial systems. And at the time that I arrived, the whole aquaculture issue was coming up. So where in aquaculture, they use salmon, they raise salmon for markets. And the salmon are escaping from these pens. And there's been a lot of research on that now. But at the time, that was really becoming a bit more of an issue. And I was always thinking, like, well, I need to come up with an idea where there's a terrestrial equivalent. These mink farms are interesting because you have these animals that are raised, they're domesticated. So if you look at a domestic mink and compare it to a wild mink, they're really different. And so there's got to be some kind of consequence for what happens when they escape. So that's what we've been working with the Ministry of Natural Resources. We're now working with the Toronto Zoo. So we're trying to use the principles of evolutionary ecology to try to understand how we can enhance the health and reproductive programs of these endangered species. I think the zoo work that we're doing could be really impactful. So the zoo community is already coming around to thinking a little bit differently about the way they manage their captive populations, but I think that we can contribute a bit more. We're going to be looking at the effects of captivity and generations of captivity on evolution of particular traits. And so one of the traits that we're interested in is sperms. So sperm competition is important in some species. So given that the reproductive programs are unnatural in some way, they really sort of short-circuit the natural mating systems of many species. So we're trying to see what are the consequences for that from an evolutionary perspective when you've got generations of animals being raised in captivity. So we've done some work on domestic dogs, and now we're turning to the zoo in terms of looking at, they have pedigrees for a lot of their endangered species. So we've got species like red wolves, black-footed ferrets, and even cheetah that we're looking at. So they know who the parents are for each animal in the zoo system. And so we've got data from those animals and using the pedigree and using in this case we're using sperm, but you could use any trait really that you were interested in. And we can document evolution of these traits within these captive populations. And the question is whether many of these animals are being re-released. So things like black-footed ferrets, for example, are being raised to be eventually released in the wild. And the question is whether the animals that have come into the breeding program are the same as the ones that are coming out.